All right, let's watch. There's a tax season villain. It's not the IRS. Welcome to Johnny Harris into our homes from the Times opinion.
Learned how big of a scam taxes in America are. Not the actual tax rate, but how we actually pay our taxes. All of this. In countries like the Netherlands.
Dude, I'm gonna be honest with you. Johnny Harris is such a funny content creator because like he will look at a situation that is like just super normal, something that a lot of people know about. You know what I mean? And we'll print out like physical copies of it or whatever the thing is and go, recently I did a deep dive on this and I found out that like the situation is crazy, guys. Okay. You're supposed to stop your car at a red light. It's like, yeah, bro, I got it. Like, what the fuck? What do you mean? Yeah, everybody knows this. What are you talking about? I did a deep dive and I found out that red is the color for stop. Here's 200 pages describing the background details. The pages actually have nothing to do with the actual issue on hand. But I still printed them out because it looks like I'm doing crazy research.
Netherlands or Japan or New Zealand. None of this exists. Like if you search how to pay your taxes in Estonia, you get a video that is less than 3 minutes long.
It should be all fine, so let's confirm, submit.
What? How does this exist? These are places where the government...
Dog, in Norway, the government pays your taxes and sends you a refund and a receipt at the end of the year, which he will describe right now. It's going to make me so mad. I mean, I guess like it doesn't matter. It's like fun that Americans learn about this kind of shit. But it's always funny that he'd like... It's always funny when he will act like he's, one, just recently discovering this, and two, did a shit ton of investigative journalism to come to this point or something.
Operates a free internet portal where the citizens can pay their taxes. Meanwhile, here in the United States, filing taxes has two huge problems. It's too complicated and it's too expensive. The majority of us taxpayers have to pay a private company to help us pay our taxes to the government. Collectively, we spend billions of dollars every year doing this. We spend billions of our precious spring hours tracking down documents, scanning crinkled, faded receipts, and just hoping that this little green number goes up.
Right now, the tax code is so complicated, so complex, it is not working for anybody.
Oh, and we also pay emotionally. We
Wait,
worry, we wonder if we're doing it right. And
bro, you can't use the worst person for this video when talking about the motherfucking tax code. Come on, dog. Ay. The New York Times is just out of control with this shit, okay? Paul, come on, man.
And most of us have wondered what happens if we do it wrong. So why is it that a bunch of other countries have it easy, whereas we get the expensive, stressful, time-eroding version of paying taxes? To understand this absurdity, I teamed up once again with the Times editorial board writer Binya Applebaum. Okay, let's do this.
Paying taxes in America is tense. It's scary, but the process of doing it doesn't need to be.
Binya has been reporting on economic and tax policy in America for a very long time. So let me show you how paying taxes in America has become the biggest scam you've never heard about, and how some lawmakers are trying to change it.
One of the most unpleasant facts of life. Taxes.
You may be wondering who got all this money.
Why we have a $10 billion a year plus business in helping people do what the government should be helping them do instead.
Walk me through the history of all the attempts to make a government-run portal to pay taxes.
So in the before times, it was a thick book. You picked up a copy maybe at the local library, and you worked through these complicated worksheets, either with the help of an accountant or in their dining rooms, and you eventually arrived at a bottom line calculation of what you owed or what the government owed to you, and put it in the mail. And then Ronald Reagan gives a public address.
We envision a system where more than half of us would not even have to fill out a return. We call it the return-free system.
In which he says, we are going to deliver to Americans an easy way to file taxes. We're going to move from this era of long forms and short forms to an era of no forms. The government is going to be the solution to your problem.
Wait, wait a minute. Is this the you've been manipulating bread prices guy? I love that guy. You've been caught manipulating bread prices in Canada. God, that was such a fucking banger. Jesus Christ, dude. This guy, he absolutely crushed that interview. what do you have to say to the fact that you've been caught manipulating bread prices?
Front lines of corporate downsizing. You've been on the front lines of corporate price fixing. You've been on the front lines of our misadventures.
I'm sorry,
of our misadventures in foreign policy. You've had direct experience of many of the things that make a lot of young people very angry about the way that this country is operating right now. You don't seem to embody that anger.
So the proposition that I've been on the front lines of corporate price fixing is just to get that out of the way.
You worked for a company that was fixing bread prices.
No, I worked for a consulting company that had a client that may have been involved in fixing, or was apparently in a scandal. I was not aware of the Canadian bread pricing scandal until last night.
It's one of my favorite bars of all time. Like, New York Times genuinely peaked at this. I was fucking cackling. I was cackling when he dropped this bomb, dude. Oh my God. New York Times peaked at this. Remember when the New York Times did this and then turned around and did a dual endorsement of Amy Klobuchar and Elizabeth Warren? The unprecedented the dual endorsement of two different losers. The dual endorsement paired up with that guy from the editorial board absolutely ripping Buttigieg a new asshole is a perfect depiction of like how the New York Times has still great journalists, great writers, and also as an institution is one of the worst. Okay? Like, they still do great journalism from time to time, and they're still incredibly important. But overall, whenever they have like an institutional voice or vibes in general, they miss the mark by the widest of margins. They're incredibly out of touch. They're incredibly elitist. They're just like perma-stuck in this like New York bubble. And it's very, very, very stupid. Yeah, ripping someone a new asshole is an expression that is like transcended far beyond like anal sex, for the record.
Reagan was serious about this. In 1980s.
But having said that, I am a homophobe. So, I make no mistake.
78,000 Americans filed their taxes using cutting-edge technology. These primitive modems and these old machines called like the Zilog system and the Metron. And it was a hopeful experiment in what could have saved us so much pain.
And then, his successors basically continued to make this promise for the next couple of decades. Bill Clinton makes it. George Bush goes out.
When I took my job 18 months ago, virtually every other major country in the world had the ability for citizens to go online and freely file their taxes. We didn't.
And then Barack Obama, when he's campaigning for president in 2007, he goes ahead and he makes the same promise.
We'll make it easier, quicker, and less expensive for you to file a return so that April 15th is not a date that is approached with dread every year.
And now we have the Biden administration making that same promise once more. This story really begins during World War II, when the United States needed a lot more money all of a sudden to conduct this war. And so it needed to change the way that it collected taxes. And the innovation that the government came up with is it said, we're going to get employers to tell us how much they are paying their workers.
So because your employer takes money out and pays taxes for you, at the end of the year, the government already knows how much money you've made. They know how much you've paid in taxes, and thus how much they owe you or you owe them.
It's a great system.
They don't know everything about your finances if you have complicated stuff like medical bills or investments. But for a lot of Americans,
taxes could be done in 15 minutes or 20 minutes.
The reason why tax day is a breeze in places like the Netherlands or Japan is because that's the day when the government just sends you a pre-populated form. You can either approve it or you can amend it if you think you qualify for some credit or write-off, or if you think they did the math wrong. But if you approve it, you're done in just a few minutes and your refund is on its way. But here in the US, they don't tell us the numbers, even though they already know them, and they don't even give us a platform to file our taxes on. So taxpayers are left with two dreadful choices. They either pay a private company to do taxes for them, or they do it on their own. And here's what that looks like. A high-stakes honesty test. One that is horribly confusing, where your children are actually called dependents, and where your total income is actually determined by adding lines 1Z, 2B, 3B, 4B, 6B, 7, and 8. I mean, it's not that complicated. Just get a hold of this 113-page instruction booklet on how to file your taxes. So if presidents from both sides of the aisle have been making an effort to do this, why has it failed?
I mean, the one-word answer is
Intuit TurboTax.
there is a company that dominates the tax preparation industry in the United States. It makes billions of dollars by charging Americans to help them complete their taxes. It makes a product called TurboTax, which for most Americans is practically synonymous with doing your taxes. And it has made an industry out of something that ought to be a public service.
It's no surprise to me that TurboTax cropped up as a solution to this problem.
And so this private company comes along and says, we'll help you. We have a software product that will make your life easier. And it did. It made millions of Americans' lives easier.
Intuit TurboTax. 100% expert guaranteed.
What happens next is the story of how we almost had what they have in other countries, a free and easy way to file our taxes. And it was almost given to us by George W. Bush.
Morning.
I think the early 2000s were the moment when we came closest to having a public filing system.
So it's the early 2000s, and the government is making this big effort to put more services online.
It's a pleasure to be here to talk about the e-government initiative.
A number of other countries around the world were beginning.
Also, the funniest part about it is that TurboTax is supposed to be free, but the free alternative still steals your information, sometimes susceptible to leaks, and also still causes you to fucking pay for it somehow. Every part of this is so broken. It's so broken. Oh my God, I hate this fucking dumbass country. Every part of this process is so fucking broken.
Beginning to successfully move their tax filing systems onto the internet. States were beginning to move tax filing onto the internet. There was a huge demand for it. You had a Republican administration backing the idea.
The Bush administration tells Intuit and the other tax prep companies to, quote, get another line of work. Like, you're going out of business. What is their response?
The company sounds the alarms, all hands on deck moment. They recognize this is an existential threat to what is an increasingly profitable business, and they do everything that they can to prevent it. They engage a very successful Washington lobbyist who, among other things, is fond of comparing himself to Darth Vader, and they do something very clever. They say to the government, we'll construct a free filing portal, and you can stay out of this business.
This lobbying effort worked, and the Bush administration agreed to not make a tax filing portal. And in return, Intuit and other tax prep companies agreed to create a version of their software that would be available for free to lower income Americans. So it's the early 2000s, and you've got regular TurboTax, which people have to pay for, but now you have this free version of TurboTax that Intuit was providing. Much to Intuit's chagrin, Americans started catching on that there was a free version of their software, and they started using it. Millions of them started using it. And this is where the real shenanigans start in earnest. It seems like a good deal in terms of like, well, if the tech company will do this and will provide it for free, then what's the problem?
The problem is that the tech companies had absolutely no interest in doing this. This was a trick.
A ProPublica investigation found that Intuit and others added lines of code to their free file site
so that it doesn't appear in a Google search. And several of the other companies are also found later to have done this to make it invisible, essentially, on the internet.
Then there was their marketing. Intuit and TurboTax started appearing everywhere, from basketball stadiums to the Super Bowl.
Welcome to the Intuit TurboTax halftime.
Then they start flooding the world with the word free.
That's right. TurboTax Free Edition is free. Free.
Woo, feels pretty good. To most people, this looked like the government-required free file version of TurboTax. But no, Intuit had created an entirely new program confusingly called TurboTax Free Edition to divert traffic from the government option.
You arrive at this website that is billed as being a free tax filing product, and you begin to do the work of filing your taxes, right? You're uploading forms, you're inputting personal information.
It was only after you spent all of these hours putting in all of your information that you discover that you actually can't file your taxes for free, that you don't qualify for the free version. All this hiding from Google searches, the confusing branding, the deceptive use of the word free. Are you confused? That was the point.
Tax prep companies have sabotaged the free file program. They've tricked and trapped American taxpayers into paying for alternative services that should be free, that are marketed as free, but in fact, they don't make free.
I fell for this so many times over the years. And after doing all of this work, there was no way I was going to do anything but pay. What other choice did I have? All of this? Who are the demographic of Americans that are...
One of the biggest ironies is that TurboTax also causes you to file on your own. And like, there are hella accountants that if you pay a little bit more than TurboTax, I mean, I don't know how much it costs now, but at the time I remember, even when I was like dead broke, I very quickly started working with an accountant, because if it's like 30 to 40, if it's 40 to $60 to file with TurboTax and you have to do all that shit, a CPA is at the time, it was like $130. Unless you're going to file it on your own for free, work with a CPA.
Are maybe most susceptible to this kind of deceptive messaging.
It's the middle of the population, people who are earning middle-class salaries, who have very simple taxes.
And the result was that by
Chatters, if you're lower income or students making $60K or less, if you're disabled, you can qualify for VITA, Volunteer Income Tax Assistance Program. There are usually plenty of states at local libraries or community colleges with VITA offices. Let chat know, 100% free, just need to qualify, usually set up by local charities or churches. Nice. This is not the real you, Hasan. Please don't say this. Love you, but stop, please. What? What the fuck is going on, man? What's happening in the chat? I feel like I'm losing it a little bit. I can't tell if chat is losing it or I'm losing it. What's going on? Take medication. Everybody take your meds. Take your meds. Take your meds.
2019, 14.
Yum. It's medication time. Yum. Time for everyone's medication.
Million Americans that were eligible to use the free tax filing software that they had promised to make ended up paying a fee for commercial software to prepare their tax returns. All the technological and marketing deception worked, so much so that they actually got sued. Regulators on behalf of customers sued Intuit last year for $141 million. They also agreed to cool it on the whole free false advertising campaign. So now when you go to the site and you see the big $0 sign, there's an asterisk next to it. So justice was served, and the greedy tech company learned its lesson, and from then on, taxes were free and easy, just like in Estonia. In 2021, Intuit announced that they were walking away from their deal that they made with the Bush administration. They would no longer offer a free filing software to low-income Americans. But in their blog post announcing this, they claim that they're still committed to making a free filing platform.
Nobody should believe that Intuit is ever going to seriously commit to offering a free version of its core business. That would be suicidal for a company to do, and there's no reason to expect them to act against their own self-interest.
Bro, I hate this lame ass government. I hate this lame ass world. I hate the fucking lame ass taxing structure that we have in the United States of America. How do you become a lobbyist when you grow up? Because they seem hella overpowered. Go to Harvard. Be related to a politician so you can very quickly get a job at a lobbying firm. Get invited to events that politicians go to.
We should treat them like adults and assume that they're going to do what's best for them. And what is best for them is to charge as many Americans as much money as possible to complete their taxes.
It's ironic to me that Intuit often positions itself as like the advocate for the people. They had this whole ad campaign showing them all the time that they could save by not doing taxes.
We all have different, sometimes crazy things to deal with. We believe people can be good at anything. Yes, even taxes.
In the free market, you have the right to walk away. That's the defining feature of the free market. You don't need to buy the apples, you don't need to buy the car, you don't need to buy the computer. You do need to file your taxes. What these companies are doing are standing astride the highway that everybody needs to travel and collecting tolls. And so the idea that this is a private market is ludicrous, and the Bush administration was quite rightly saying to these companies, get off the highway. You are not allowed to collect tolls here.
But luckily, there might just be change in the air.
The IRS is releasing a report this week on the possibility of a free government-run tax.
Yeah, exactly like healthcare chatter. You are absolutely correct. Another criminal enterprise that we have paywalled.
Filing service.
The Biden administration has funded a pilot program for the IRS to create a portal where we Americans can pay our taxes without the need of a third-party middleman called TurboTax. They're set to launch this as a small pilot for the 2024 tax season. But of course,
they are determined to prevent this or to make it as impractical and small scale as possible because they have lots of money to throw at it. They're collecting from all of us every year our fees for filing taxes and using them to ensure that we have to continue paying those fees to file taxes.
Bloomberg reported that Intuit's spending on lobbying has hit an all-time high. It's paying dozens of lobbyists. These lobbyists include Mitch McConnell's speechwriter, Nancy Pelosi's ex-chief of staff, a former Republican congressman, and an advisor to Joe Biden when he was vice president.
You know, it's really striking because, the rhetoric around the IRS is so unremittingly negative that you might assume that Americans would want the protection that TurboTax says it is offering to them. But when pollsters go out and ask the American people about this, both parties say, we want a government option. We want a free filing portal. We do not understand why we need to pay in order to pay our taxes. It doesn't make any sense.
Each time Free File came up, an army of well-paid lawyers and lobbyists descends on Congress.
I wonder why. I wonder why we can't get that, even though everybody wants it. Oh man. Oh, fuck. How do we get there? Oh, it's so shocking to me that there's always this weird bipartisan. Hey guys, isn't it weird how there's always this weird bipartisan concession on this matter? There's always this weird bipartisanship in the number one democracy in the world when it comes to like all this dumb shit, all this weird stuff. So odd, dude. But we have a two-party system that's like totally democratic and represents the interests of the population.
To squash it.
Look alive. China, 9/11, China, Hamas, China, 9/11, China, immigrants, Mexicans, over the border. It's like a smoke grenade. There you go. Fuck. For a brief moment, you might have thought like, oh, wow, this two-party system, this duopoly doesn't seem to lead to any kind of democratic outcome or democratic result that the people actually deserve and genuinely think they're buying into. It's weird. For a brief moment, I almost thought that, but then I realized China, Mexicans over the border, Chinese over the border, Iran over the border. Over the border comes Hamas from Iran. Iranian Mexicans that are building tunnels, but Jewish tunnels, specifically in Brooklyn. Watch out for the tunnels. Iran is building tunnels. Hamas and Iran building tunnels under the Chabad in Brooklyn. China. Remember China. China is coming to build our tunnels. They built the tunnels under the border wall.
Must not be allowed to happen again.
But the pilot program is already in danger of ending. House Republicans are pushing to cut $14 billion in funding for the IRS, including the money for the pilot program. They say that the government can't be trusted to tell Americans how much they owe the government. But this isn't a partisan issue. Leaders from both sides of the aisle have known for decades that we need to make this happen, that this is the sensible thing to do. And hopefully, this is the moment to finally make it happen.
I think at the end of the day, this story is about faith in government. It's about the ability of the government to do what it should have been doing all along, to do it well, and to deliver what Americans deserve, which is an easy and free way to file their taxes. This is a chance for the government to prove itself. It's a chance for the government to make right on a promise that it has broken so often over the last 40 years and to say, we can do better, we are doing better. We're going to do this right.